Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Trek Prime. We're in episode 38, and we're still Prime, and we are still canon. And today we are going to be talking about Star Trek, the animated series. And, they, abbreviated this to TAS, and I don't really hear that used that much. I don't know if you do.
Yeah, usually that's what they refer to it as.
Usually I hear it referred to very properly as the animated series, but, it's usually TOS and then the animated series. I don't know. And maybe that's interesting because we were talking about this, and it says right on Wikipedia, and before I go on about this, in terms of canon, I can only imagine how people would say, oh, Wikipedia is not a reliable source. You can go in there and edit anything you want, and that's true. But, I mean, who's going to go in there and really get into the animated Star Trek page? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get down to what is known about it and the series itself. It had 22 episodes. It's a season's worth of episodes. There was a 16-episode 1973 season and a 6-episode 1974 second season, but you can put them all into one season. And it was said here this was actually considered to be the fourth season of TOS in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Most of the original writers worked on it. All the actors except Walter Koenig wasn't involved in this, was he?
Well, he contributed a story.
Yeah, he wrote. Yeah. But there was no Chekhov. But that led to a new character, didn't it?
Yeah, Eric's.
Yes, Eric's. Did they mention what species he's from?
They do, and they mentioned it again in one of the, I think it was Deep Space Nine or Voyager or something like that. So, the race that he's from was canonized right on, on the show. I'm trying to think now what race he was.
Yes, he was Idosian.
Eldosian, that's right, yeah.
And Idosians, for those of you who haven't seen the series, and I'm sure there are some, they are orange aliens who have three limbs, like three arm-like limbs.
Yeah, they have one that comes out like their chest.
Right. And the uniform was custom designed to fit it.
Yeah.
And have yellow eyes. Now, wasn't Eric's Jimmy Doohan narrated character? Voice character?
He might have been, yeah. I think it probably was. They also had Cation.
Maurice, yes.
Maurice, yeah.
Who was always...
see a couple of new characters.
Yes, we referenced the Cation with Star Trek V, Kirk's little $6 million man.
Well, they showed some Cations in Star Trek IV on the Federation Council.
Right, there was a Cation. I don't know if it was male or a female. A guy with a Cation.
I'm guessing it was probably a male because the female seemed to have longer hair.
He looked more lion-like.
Yeah.
More leopard-like, or more like a bobcat or something.
Yeah, something like that.
But the female, however, was excessive fur, and Maurice was kind of a stand-in to Uhura because Uhura was in this.
Yeah, but they kept swapping them,
Right, because they had other people on TOS that way too.
Yeah.
But what always fascinating about the animated series is because they obviously it's going to cost a lot more to hire other actors to do voice work. They actually use a lot of the principal characters to do voice work, and I always found that very interesting. Aliens and sometimes disembodied energy beings we didn't actually see they would use.
Well, like I said, Jimmy Doohan, he really saved probably a lot of money, by doing a lot of the voices for some of the other characters,
Yeah, maybe that's some Takei doing some things.
Yeah, that's right, he did.
Of course, Takei's voice is so distinctive. You can pick it up.
Yeah, I know.
How he enunciates. And Nichelle, because her voice is so lyrical, you can tell hers too. But she did a lot of the higher pitched female voices where they kind of sung.
That's right.
I always noticed if there was a character in TOS that always had a sing-songy tone, it was always her. Because she had that sing-songy way about her. I'm not sure if Shatner did any voice work, but he was in it. Nimoy was, obviously. And D. Kelly. Now, if I remember, didn't Nimoy say that he wouldn't really do the animated series voices if Nichelle and Kay couldn't be brought back because he felt that would represent Star Trek best if they had all the leads?
Yeah, I think most of the cast all went along with that. That if they were going to do it, everybody was going to come back.
There were some early script ideas. I don't know if you heard about them. I couldn't find pictures of them. One was they were going to do it because Hal Sutherland and Filmation did this, and we all know about their other work. They did a lot of superhero stuff, and
Mhm.
I remember TV tie-ins. What was their other famous? They had another famous show they did at that time. And it wasn't Josie and the Pussycats, was it?
Oh, no, they did a lot. I mean, God, Saturday morning. I mean, they had all kinds of
Yeah,
cartoons.
back then when you have a load of these
Yeah.
cartoons. Actually, I
think they had like Tarzan was another one that
right,
they
we'll
did.
call this the motion picture of podcast. I'm researching this as I go along.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a cartoon universe.
I mean, it's all you could tell because of the art quality. You can always tell what it was Filmation doing it and stuff like that.
Yeah, they did the Superman Aqua Hour, Aquaman Hour, Superboy.
Yeah, they did He-Man when that was on.
They did the Hardy Boys cartoon. They did the Archie Comedy Hour. Something about Joey Lewis. Fat Albert. They did Fat Albert.
Yep.
The Brady Kids cartoon, Lassie. My Favorite Martian cartoon. They did a lot of tie-ins.
Yeah.
In their day. Yeah, they did Black Star too. I don't know if you remember Black Star.
Yep.
Oh dear. They also did Gilligan's Planet. Oh.
Yeah, that.
Oh well, okay. So
not all the cartoons worked.
well, I know. I'm just saying that. Could you imagine if they crossed over the animated Star Trek with Gilligan's Planet? This is the most bizarre cartoon crossover ever.
Yeah.
But, so anyway, that's just Filmation's. But they're kind of iconic. Everybody knows their style, and that's the thing about the animated Star Trek. When you go back and look at it, they reuse a lot of the animatics and they just redress it. That's kind of a technique they use.
Yeah.
They weren't a high budget animated studio, but one thing about the TAS here, and this is something that I remember about it, is that ironically, even with that, they were able to do things with the animated Star Trek they just physically could not do in TOS.
Yeah.
Flying aliens, very exotic planetscapes that look nothing like TOS.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, this might be one of the most elaborate and in some cases downright meta and almost psychedelic looking Star Treks ever. Because they created these exotic environments. Now, before I go into the specific show, I want to talk about a little personal story time with it. When did you first see this cartoon?
I remember watching a few episodes of it when it came on, in Saturday morning when it was on, like in 73 or 4 like that. But I didn't even know what it was then, because this was before I was even watching TOS. But I would just flip through the channels, and I knew that my favorite cartoons were going to come on after that. So I would catch the tail ends of some of the Star Trek ones, So I really didn't even know what.
That might be one of the first Star Trek you theoretically ever saw. You just didn't realize what it was.
Yeah, I just didn't know what it was, but I wanted to watch.
You saw it during its first run. Interesting, sort of, a little bit. Okay,
but, so yeah, it wasn't until later when I started watching TOS, and then I was like, oh, okay. So and I didn't know. I thought maybe the cartoons came first, and then they made the live action one based on the cartoon. So that's what I thought.
It would have been that way if they'd had Star Trek cartoons in 1963, and then they'd gone over to live action.
So I felt like that's how it started, but I had it wrong. It was the other way around.
Right, exactly. But here's how I started. You know what restaurant we have up here called the Ground Round?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, in the 80s, they used to have this big, huge screen TV that filled the whole wall. They used to have musicians that came up there and played, but they got rid of them, so they brought up a TV. Now, here's the thing. They'd play TV, but there was no volume. There was no audio. And one day, I was just eating dinner, and I started seeing this animated Star Trek, and I had Kirk is sitting there, and I'm like, they made a cartoon of Star Trek? Where can I get this? And you couldn't. This was 87, 8.
Yeah.
It was a syndication on cable.
It was a long time before they released those out.
Right. I think Nickelodeon played them a lot, or one of those stations. But I couldn't hear what it was saying. I'm like, can I get the formula? Because I wasn't seeing the Star Trek. So anyway, around I think is it 89 or 90, Paramount finally put out these 2-episode VHS tapes of this thing.
Yes.
Which were completely and utterly out of production order. I don't know why they did it that way.
Yeah. When
I got the DVD set years later, the first one I got, Volume 1, had the triple episode to start out with.
Yeah.
Okay. So they were all out of order. But when I saw it, I was really impressed. I thought, and this is weird because, remember, I'm a kid thinking of, the Next Generation being on and the old series looking kind of old at that point. And I'm saying that this is actually almost better than TOS in a lot of ways. I mean, what they were doing with it. So that was my just personal memory of it. So we talked about going down each episode, but you want to just take a thing, we take a turn and talk about storylines or episodes that really influenced us and just take turns.
Yeah, I guess we do that, yeah.
You want to start or do you want me to start?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. We'll start with the triple one, okay? More Triples, More Trouble, I think was the name of it.
Yep.
Okay, so this is a favorite of mine. Well, it was the first one I saw. And just to give you an idea of how messed up this is, I saw that before I saw The Trouble with Tribbles. Okay, that was the first triple one I saw. So I had no idea who the Cyrano Jones was. Because if you remember, Kirk was very emphatic. Cyrano Jones! He was very emphatic. Like, this is a character like,
Yeah.
Like, it's supposed to be like a big Batman bat. It's Cyrano Jones! Like, it's a big deal. And it turns out that he's the guy who's been peddling triples. So, and Stanley Adams returns to play the character, by the way.
Yeah.
And he's created pink triples that are safe. Because he's had them genetically engineered so they don't reproduce. The problem is they turn out to be triple colonies. All these triples in this one big giant triple bag or something. I don't know what. When they eat, they just reproduce inside.
Yeah.
And they just create this bundle of triple. And so these fat triples basically take over the ship. But the Klingons invent this weapon that can demobilize a starship, but it's useless because it diminishes all their power.
Yeah.
So it's the one time where the Klingons actually made a really big mistake in Star Trek and totally didn't get something right. Yeah. I mean, if I was an alien race in Star Trek, I would not invent a weapon that diminished my power to use it. I mean, honestly, I thought the Klingons really screwed up with that one.
Yeah.
And Koloff is sitting there, and it's not wasn't it Trelane, the Campbell?
Yeah.
William Campbell, who played Trelane. Jimmy Doohan, I think, did the voice in this one.
Yeah.
Because I know certain Jimmy Doohan kind of tropes.
Yeah.
But anyway, so and basically, again, it's kind of jokey and kind of Klingon like they're going back to Sherman's planet, and they introduce 2 new starships, the robot ship, which we would see a CGI version of in TOS Remastered as the Antares and Charlie X.
That's right.
I always thought it was a kind of a cool design. It was. I always thought of that as kind of like a Starfleet civilian ship. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, it doesn't have the same kind of, aesthetic that all the other starships have.
It looks kind of like a big Jawa transport in Star Wars. It is that big blocky, but it's still very Federation. It has that look, and it has the nacelles and the little thing in the front. Except the Klingons use those as total cannon fodder. They're blowing them up all over the place, and then Kirk is hauling one around, and then goes back and picks up the other one. And then Spall's like, we should just, that's what they want to do. They want to limit our power by making us go back and pick up this ship here, pick up this ship there. So the Klingons are making him run through the mill because their weapon is totally useless.
Yeah.
So in the end, McCoy makes sure these triples are safe, and I guess we're supposed to end the triple problem in the end. Of course, Kirk still gets piled up in these pink triples. I always find it funny that the Klingons are...
Didn't they introduce the triple predator?
Yes. Cyrano Jones. It was a genetically engineered Klingon, and it was called the Glommer. And it's a little...
There you go.
It's a little orange kind of jellyfish thing.
It's got like were they eyes that came up?
I always thought it was a robot. It sounded like a robot.
Yeah, I mean, it was biological, but it had 2 legs, and it was kind of fat, and it had like these eyes that came out at the top, and it was... it had a different kind of purr.
It would meep and beep and purr and all kinds of noises. And it looked kind of like a Tholian, sort of, only a really squat Tholian.
Yeah, really tiny.
They squished a Tholian down, and maybe that's what they did. Maybe they just genetically mutated a Tholian into a glom. It's only a Tholian. It had that kind of Tholian eyes, but it was all...
Yeah.
So what it would do is it would just basically swallow triples.
Yeah.
And so he had to transport the Glommer back to the Klingons.
Yeah.
And I just remember when the Glommer was on the Klingon ship, it was kind of running like Sonic the Hedgehog. It was like, it sounded that cute how the Glommer was. And then they beamed over this giant triple into the Klingon engineering room.
Yeah.
I just remember one of the Klingons saying, the engineering room is filled with tribble. He's like, go attack it! And all these tribbles come out and just, don't do that again. It kind of makes the Klingons into something other than everything has to be pain and death. They end up just kind of messing up, which you don't see the Klingons do a lot. You don't see the Klingons kind of just, being wouldn't say humanized, they're not human, but you don't really see Klingons make mistakes.
Yeah.
And this one, they make every mistake they possibly can and have to come out looking good. So it's just, it kind of gives the Klingons a little, it kind of brings them into the human condition where they're not infallible warriors that have glorious victory. They get had by a giant pink tribble.
Yeah.
You know. So anyway, and this Glommer thing, which if I recall, doesn't the Glommer escape from them?
I think so. Yeah.
It runs away from this giant tribble it can't eat.
But it was kind of neat because they actually answered the question, like how these tribbles could live on a world and not have the whole world just full of tribbles. And they, of course, they have the natural predator, which Spock had mentioned in the TOS episode, that if you remove these tribbles from their natural habitat, where it's full of predators and stuff like that, they'll just proliferate out of control.
Glommer was genetically engineered, I know that, but it may have been genetically engineered from maybe a Tholian and maybe a natural predator on their home world.
Yeah.
So, because like I said, it's like, like they say on Earth, that's why they go to another country. They say don't bring koala bears out of Australia because another ecosystem may not be able to handle them.
Yeah.
Or don't bring frogs into Australia, whatever, or, any animal from different climates because, they could have tribble problems or they could carry disease. So, and so that was that one. And of course, that wasn't the first one, but that was the first one I saw because it was the first one on the VHS. So anyway, what would be a favorite of yours?
Yesteryear.
Yes, that's a good one.
Remember they had an Andorian first officer and they beamed up to the ship. And
Yes,
they're like, what happened?
That was always confusing. I didn't realize there'd been a timeline change because Spock had come back from his past and everybody didn't know who he was except Kirk.
Yeah.
Because Kirk had been in the past when he was, so the timeline change didn't affect him.
Yeah.
And when he came out, he's like, "Who's he?" He's like, "You know, Mr. Spock." And then Kirk's like, "Oh, who's that?" "Oh, that you should know Thalen by now. He's been your first officer for 5 years." And it's the Andorian appearing out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So, and I had never heard about an Andorian being in Starfleet at that point. Yeah. So I imagine they had, but that Yesteryear is interesting because that ended up being the canon point of the show, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that episode basically was like, I think it was written by DC Fontana, and it became part of Star Trek history in a way. So, because they always referred to how Spock was a kid and how he was picked on by Vulcans and
into the. Now that was about Spock.
Yeah, he was going through the Cos-1 thing. And
Cos-1 ordeal, which was a maturity test.
Yes. Yeah.
And one thing about that is that it actually gave you a full look at Shikar, the city that Spock came from.
Yeah.
And the idea that Vulcans actually lived in these almost glass houses.
Yeah, it's sort of like the city kind of was like a circle.
Right, it was like a big round circle, and there were these little crystalline kind of houses that were kind of looked like glass.
Yeah.
I noticed there weren't a lot of stones around. Probably good.
Yeah.
Because they have glass houses, right? They look kind of crystalline or glassy.
Yeah.
So it gave you an idea of, and it's very different than the Vulcan home you saw in Enterprise. They look very different.
Yeah.
They were very alien, and they looked very different. One thing I find interesting about this episode is showing Spock's human half. Because there are these Vulcans, and I found this interesting. They're sitting there taunting him, calling him an Earther, which I guess is a derogatory term for a half-human, half-Vulcan. Yeah. And they're saying, "You'll never be a true Vulcan," and Spock says, "Well, that's not true." So they say, "Oh, your father's a Vulcan, but he married a human," so Spock shoves them. And then Spock from the future goes back to try to change his timeline. He calls himself Selleck.
Yeah.
Almost me more than material right there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Magnum PI at the bottom or something. Anyway, so the point is that, Sarek tells him, "I'm sorry for the display of emotion on the part of my son." And I'm like, those other Vulcans were displaying emotion too.
Yeah.
So it gave me the impression that, hey, Vulcans aren't born all logical.
That's right.
That there's a discipline they have to learn, because these Vulcans were not logical.
Yeah, none of the kids were, yeah.
And he's pointing to Spock as being the emotional one. And how logical is it to taunt somebody based on their racial background?
Yeah.
Infinite diversity, right? So these are not Vulcans who have been trained in the ways of Konar or Serac. I don't know when they begin doing that, but these Vulcans hadn't begun doing that. You could tell they were being very emotional.
Yeah.
And, so of course he's looking at Spock being that way. So it was an interesting. It really expanded on the father-son, Sarek and Spock dynamic.
Yeah.
And we also saw
The other part that I found interesting about that story was that in order for that, what happened on Vulcan to have happened, it was a timeline that had to go back. It was like, how do I put this? He had to go back in time in order to continue the timeline in the future. It was like a
predestination paradox.
Yeah, so it's like you had to go back in order to go forward again. And
that's what happened in the First Contact movie. They had to go back and create their own history.
Yeah, that's right. So that was like, one of the first times they showed that,
I mean, if they'd done it in Voyager, they would have had like 5 or 6 Spocks in some other room somewhere. And been like, oh yeah, we already got those other Spocks, But anyway, luckily they kind of, he went back in time and did the deed, and that Thalen guy was gone. So,
yeah.
And also, if I remember, Amanda was killed in the other timeline.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And Sarek was some sort of ambassador for a certain amount of time that was not correct, and it's funny how the timeline when Spock went back was so rudimentarily changed.
Yeah.
His family's life, his position on the ship, but nothing else really changed much.
Yeah.
Think about if they did that now. They'd have had this transdimensional Enterprise and all these crazy flashy things.
Yeah.
Back then, the alternate timeline was so subtle. It was the same Enterprise.
Yeah.
But I guess an event that happened on Vulcan wouldn't, I don't know if Spock affected the Federation at that point that much.
No, at that point, probably not. But
anyway,
if you'd have been like, let's say years, decades later, and that changed, then, because after all the years Spock had influenced the Federation and did stuff for the Federation, then it would have been a much bigger change.
Yeah, now that I think about it, in that timeline, Khan probably destroyed the Enterprise.
Yeah, because Spock wasn't there.
Right, unless somebody else did it.
Yeah.
I mean, but Spock wouldn't have done it, so he might have destroyed the Enterprise.
Yeah.
There'd have been no search for Spock because there was no Spock to die. He died earlier.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting kind of time travel, and they brought back the Guardian of Forever.
Yeah.
And it was interesting they had people actually researching it and using it.
Yeah.
Like
Which is kind of like, aren't they taking a risk every time they, turn that thing on there that they might be changing something in the past, like.
Right, but they seem to have this system where you went back and observed and I'm surprised if that's the case. Why didn't they use the Guardian of Forever for more missions in the future with these controlled time travel events?
Yeah, I don't know. They had a fan made a Star Trek episode where they actually flew the Enterprise into a giant Guardian of Forever, and they sent the ship back in time. It was it was somebody's idea that there was actually 2 portals. They had a smaller one for people, and they had a larger one for sending massive groups of people or bigger pieces of equipment through.
It almost sounds like a Stargate in a way.
Yeah, almost. But here's the thing, though. They had to fly the ship into the atmosphere in order to get it through the portals.
That sounds very inconvenient. Well, it makes sense when the Enterprise is approaching and sitting on the edge of Forever.
Yeah.
They were actually passing the ripples of time near the atmosphere, so.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, that was a favorite of. I like a lot of these. I've been watching a lot of them lately in preparation for this, and even ones I'd forgotten. I'm gonna go to one that interested me because they kind of revisited this a little bit in Voyager, and plus the fact it was, usually Kirk does this. It was the Lorelei signal.
Yeah.
Basically, the Enterprise men are seduced by a group of space sirens who are draining their energy.
Yeah.
Only it's not just Harry Kim this is happening to this time, because that happened to him in Voyager, but this is Harry Kim. And in this one, every male on the ship is seduced by this. And they end up going down to this planet where they hyper-age and they have to solve the problem. What I love about this episode is they do something I totally wish they'd done in TOS. Uhura had to take command of the ship.
Yeah.
And, she, like Crusher, did not do what Troy did. So, good for her. I wish they'd done that in TOS. That just really would have been cool because she was 4th in command, and I don't know if TV would have allowed it at that time.
Yeah.
Like I said, it really showed another dimension of Uhura's character. In TOS, she more or less answered phone calls.
Yeah, she really didn't give her too much to do.
She almost seemed like a secretary in a lot of ways, but in this one, she actually showed her case what her rank meant and what she could do.
Yeah.
And so we gave Uhura more dimension, which was a great idea. Because, the men were vulnerable to these women. So, this is actually pretty forward-thinking. You've got men who are vulnerable in this to women who are draining their energy and women taking command. But, this is during the beginning of the feminist movement, so this totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I just imagine Jean probably loved that one because that totally reverses the damsel in distress. You have men in distress.
Yeah.
And you have women having to take charge. And I always found that interesting, the reversal of the sexual positioning in that.
Yeah.
So next one, do you remember very well?
Spark 2, the Infinite Vulcan.
Oh, yes. Boy, we had to bring in that brings in a character from the Eugenics Wars, Caniculus.
Yeah.
And he's creating all these giant. And what I love about that is they're on this planet where every life form is some plant variant.
Yeah.
They have the Thalosians, which are like these giant sprouts that are extinct because it's Caniculus brought them a disease, and they're trying to build spaceships to enact world peace. They don't realize there's a Federation out there yet. There's a little mobile tribble thing that has a deadly poison that pricks Sulu, and they have to cure him. Yeah. And then there are these giant flying things that are apparently also plants.
Yeah, they look kind of like flying dragons almost.
Yeah, they're kind of like, yeah. and when I saw them, I thought they're like dragons. And then Spock said they're plants. Those are plants? How could a plant be purple and have a beak and fly? By that logic, would bluebirds be plants? It's a weird thing to see these. I don't know. It was a very abstract idea of a plant, but that's what I mean by this is kind of psychedelic.
Yeah.
They would create they kind of flap around. They're like little bat dragon things, and they take Spock. And the whole idea is, for some reason, this Caniculus is making these giant versions of himself, and then he makes, like you said, the savior of the galaxy, Spock 2. He's like 50 feet tall, and has to announce it. It's almost like you could do a theme song for that. Spock 2, savior of the universe. Get Queen to do it. Spock, there you go.
I never understood why they had to make him into a giant. I mean, it was like
that was a little off. And even Kirk is like, why are you making a giant version of yourself and Spock here? Why can't they just be regular, And like, you'll be the master of a super race who have to be like 50 feet tall. And it makes sense. These eugenics wars, can you imagine Khan being like 50 feet tall?
Jeez.
Like a Khan, I mean, just over the top. You could tell, very 20th century, very over the dramatic.
Yeah.
And just even announcing it, Spock 2! Not like a series. Like, you've seen Spock 1, now Spock 2!
Yeah.
But it's a good episode because the Philosians are a type of life form we would never have seen on TOS.
Yeah.
And, we saw the giant Apollo, but we never saw giant Spocks or anything.
Yeah.
Who knows, if Apollo decided to do it, he might have been a giant Spock. I don't know. So anyway, Spock 2, I guess, ends up staying with Caniculus to help bring back the Thalosian community, but he brings Spock back to life through a mind. I notice in TOS they call it mind touch.
Yeah, that's right.
Not mind meld. And so Spock 2, mind melds with Spock 1 to bring him back or whatever, and so there won't be any other Spocks. There's not going to be a Spock 3.
Yeah.
There was Star Trek The Search for Spock, but not Spock 3.
Well, if they want to search for Spock, they could have ended up on that planet, and they got the giant Spock.
Yeah, I can see it now. Oh, we have way to bring Spock back. Spock 2!
You're going to squeeze him into the ship.
Yeah, we'll have to beam Spock. I mean, can you imagine him going down to Vulcan for the refusion? And this giant Spock, boom, 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 boom. Yeah, don't crush Tolar, please. Don't crush the little stone thing they just set up right away. Don't crush your father. Just go over there. I mean, but yeah, they do anything in the animated series when they did that, but they could have had Spock too, just kind of be there,
Yeah.
He was probably busy trying to help bring back the Thalosians or whatever. So
yeah.
But that was the animated series was so good at presenting these unique ideas.
Yeah.
So we have this other Spock out there we have to deal with, so. Hey. Okay, so my turn. Yeah, that's a good one. I almost mentioned that myself, actually. I'll mention the one right after it because I never saw it until the DVD. The Magics of Magus 2. Now, this is truly psychedelic.
Yeah.
They end up on this planet that resembles a little peppermint. It's kind of pink and red. And they meet up with this being that calls himself, what is it, Lucian or Lucius or something like that.
Yeah.
And basically he looks like Satan. Except he's presenting himself as not being evil. Just odd.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he whisked these people away into this LSD trippy place where they beam down to this planet and they're all these big globular things. And he's telling them that, well, I know how attached you are to being whole. So then he creates this whole society. It's a society that runs by magic. And I guess the idea is that people from this world came to Earth and inspired our mythology, but then betrayed them and they left and they were afraid of people. And they kind of put them on trial like Q in the end, using the Salem witch trials as the backdrop. And I always found that plot line really interesting because it kind of brought to mind, some of the ideas about the preservers. Remember they were referenced in TOS?
Yep, that's right.
I always wondered if this species were the preservers.
I don't know. I mean, who knows?
But I mean, it's an odd episode for sure. And, I know it was the early 70s and it was a kid's cartoon, but it reminded me more like the Beatles' Yellow Submarine or something. It was just very odd. And the concept, and that's another thing about TAS. They try to respect Star Trek storytelling. A lot of this would have kind of gone over children's heads. I mean, they simplified some of it, but some of it was kind of, Star Trek was always cerebral. This was kind of cerebral for its audience, which might have had a lot to do with why it didn't stay on long. But, I don't know if at 9 years old, I would have gotten a lot of the subtleties in it, because it basically was Star Trek, only in a half an hour form and with the language edited a little bit.
Yeah.
But the plot lines were not, they weren't that outside the realm of what they did on Star Trek. So anyway, it's your turn.
I like Mud's passion.
Yes.
That was pretty good. They catch up with him on a planet and he's trying to
he came back too, didn't he?
Yeah.
I can't remember his name. He died. I can't remember his name. But yeah, he came back to play Mud. And basically he played up Chapel's interest in Spock.
Yeah.
And what it does is the potion makes people really close friends, or it's like a love potion.
Yeah.
And what happens is that, everybody on the ship, they kind of start lusting after each other, but then when it wears out, they start hating each other.
Yeah. That was the side effect.
Right. It was like, a moment of, as that guy in Next Generation said, a moment of pleasure replaced by succeeded by a moment of pain.
Yeah.
I just remember Spock said something really weird to Kirk during this transition, because he was when he said, "Oh, Christine, I must rescue Christine." He's going to this planet, and then he's telling Kirk how much he likes him and how much he respects him as a friend or whatever. And then Kirk says something, and Spock says something like, "That was an absurdly stupid thing to do." It's a really weird thing like that, and I just
an outburst like that.
Yeah, just some really weird, disconnected jumble of words that.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting because Mud's putting us a circus sideshow thing at the beginning. Remember?
Yeah.
And he's got this like shapeshifter pretending to be the assistant.
Yeah.
Some creature or something. And
you see that friggin' trench that Spock dug up with his phaser? Crap, it looked like he made the friggin' canyon there.
Oh yeah, was that when they had that rock creature was coming after them?
Well, no, that was at the beginning where they were trying to keep the people that were mad at Mud away from them. And Spock took his phaser and he just phasered out a huge trench.
Yeah, wasn't that a phaser 1 too? I can't.
I think it was a phaser 2 actually. He took out and he just.
Yeah, so those phasers in TS must be super powerful or something, because they can just dig up half a planet or something.
Yeah, I mean, crap, you made a chasm there. You gotta fill into it. It's like.
Well, who needs ship phasers when you can just fire one of them and just have the planet goes to pieces?
Yeah.
Is that the high setting we don't see, or what?
Yeah, it must be a higher setting.
Maybe it's that same mechanic that allowed Kirk to shove that Cation 30 feet across the room. Sometimes these things pass, logic, I guess, in this particular case. So yeah, I remember that. And it was a good thing that they got, I can't remember the guy's name. Roger C. Carmel, right? They got him to do the voice, so that was cool to have. But I mean, Harry Mudd's such a distinctive character. You'd have to have, he's dead now, so now we have to settle with Rainn Wilson in Discovery. But anyway, we're talking about canon here. So anyway, not miscellaneous. I can't think of any other word for it right now. Back to TAS. Um, I, I guess the next one that really, interests me, in terms of a standout episode, actually two, because I'm gonna have a lot of honorable mentions in this episode, because I want to talk about elements of ones that are okay. And one of my favorites is next to the last one, called "How Sharper Than a Serpent's Tooth," which basically deals with them encountering. There's a history behind the guy, if you remember, Ensign Walking Bear.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually voiced by a Native American actor with a really interesting backstory. There's a YouTube video you can see. And he recognized the spaceship as being the Mayan deity Kukulkan. And it turns out that this entity is a source of a lot of mythology on Earth. So is he one of these races from Magus 2?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a city that's kind of like a Mayan city, but it has elements of Egyptian stuff. And the idea is that he would come back and people built this city exactly right, but they didn't. Each human culture developed different variations on it, but they didn't build the city exactly right. Yeah. So they did it, and he was gonna, like Apollo, he thought he could teach them different things, but of course they resisted. And he had this zoo of different animals who were in like little holodecks, and one of them was a Capellan power cat. Remember them?
Yeah. These
big lion things that charge up electricity, and he ended up, essentially being cannon fodder to rescue these enslaved creatures. So it was an interesting story in the end, kind of connecting mythology to a possible alien thing.
Yeah.
It's like Doctor Who. I always kind of like them when they connect, science with mythology. It kind of goes with Gene Roddenberry's vision.
Yeah.
And I guess it's your turn next.
I like the Practical Joker.
Oh, I was just watching that this morning. The Kirk is a Jerk one.
Yeah.
And
the computer's laughing.
Yeah, the computer's laughing. And that's where they introduced the Rec Room, which is actually the early holodeck, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
And they have a control panel. They can kind of, it's like Voyager's holodeck, where they have that control panel.
Yeah.
But they can kind of make
it looks like a curved podium or something that just sits there. Right.
And I read that they actually wanted to introduce that in TOS, but they had no idea how they were going to pull it off.
Yeah.
How the effect would work. They have to go on location for a lot of that stuff. So they did it in the animated series. And
they showed the inflatable Enterprise.
Oh, the balloon! That just came right out of the blue for me, because what's happening is the Romulans, they go through this thing, and the Romulans are giving chase, and it's possible the Practical Joker doesn't like being joked upon, so it creates this giant Enterprise balloon. It distracts the Romulans for like a second until they blow the thing up. But I guess right. And I'm just thinking, did the Enterprise generate that as a joke somehow, or did the Enterprise carry a spare balloon in that shuttle bay? Absolutely no reason.
The thing was like 5 times larger than the Enterprise.
Imagine if they did that in Best of Both Worlds. Picard said, "Okay, let's open Shuttle Bay 1 and inflate the giant Enterprise D balloon." Back to board. I mean, or Voyager saying, "Let's just strap the crank with a Voyager balloon."
Yeah.
We got 2 shuttlecrafts and a Voyager balloon in the back there.
They could have used it in the Year of Hell, right? They could just use a Voyager balloon in the Year of Hell.
It's weird that they would carry balloons of the starship on it like a distraction. I mean, how could the Picard maneuver have worked with a Ferengi if he had a balloon?
Yeah.
Forget appearing in 2 places. Like, generate the Stargazer balloon. The Picard was a giant balloon. I mean, I always wondered if the computer just generated that, or if that was just some weird thing that. Where would they put that?
Yeah, the thing was huge.
They put that giant 3 times the size of the Enterprise balloon in the back of that shuttle bay. I mean, in the JJ shuttle bay maybe, but not in that TOS.
Yeah, really.
I mean, honestly, but I'm just thinking, unless that TOS Enterprise and animated series had a significant size markup, but I don't think it did.
Yeah, or maybe when it's deflated, it's very, very easy to fold and.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, what if it's like that big when it's folded up? And it's like in a million little layers, and when you like remember those little dinosaur things you used to get? You put in water and they make a funny smell sponge. Yeah. Little pills. Maybe it's like a little capsule. When you put it in space, it blows it up. Like the vacuum just blows it up.
Yeah.
You know how you have to use vacuums to open up to blow up some balloons?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it was like. It's like if you go into the vacuum space, this little tiny capsule just blows up into this giant balloon. I can't really sort a giant like I mean, that's not going to come down Fifth Avenue during the Macy's parade, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that balloon would have been about the size of the Enterprise E, wouldn't it?
Yeah, just about.
Yeah, so like, maybe that's how big the JJ ship is. Who knows?
Yeah.
Like the Enterprise balloon they use in the animated series, use that as a size reference, you know. But yeah, that was a good one. And also, one thing we got to see in that was the Enterprise crew eating real food.
Yeah.
Real food, not cubes. And it spit real food out. Remember, it was Scotty was trying to order.
Knee deep in desserts.
Oh, the Romulans were knee deep in desserts.
Yeah, because that thing, whatever was infected the Enterprise, got into their ship and was infecting them. So their ship.
They sent him in there in the end as a kind of a troll.
Yeah.
After they destroyed the balloon. So. I was watching that when I saw that balloon. I was like, everybody see that. But yeah,
how they would pull that off on a live action, you know?
That would have been bizarre to say the least. I mean, no other series had the balloon concept. But anyway, so yeah, there was that one, and let's see, the last mention I wanted to make of one I really liked as an important episode was the counterclock incident. Another kind of unique time travel concept. We meet the pre-Captain Pike Robert April, and his wife Sarah, and they end up going into this antimatter universe.
Yeah.
And meeting up with an alien, with a human, a backwards talking person who goes on this ship that's traveling at warp 36, all warp scale. I think this still uses the old warp scale. So warp 36 is who knows what on the ultra warp. So anyway, so they go through this thing and they end up in this place where they age really fast, but backwards.
Yeah.
And they start.
The crew was like all babies or something.
Right, they turn into teenagers and everything. And Earth, I always found this clever. I didn't realize it for years and what it meant. It's called Aerith in the other universe. And I realized that's Terra backwards.
Yeah.
They call it Aerith. And like I said, her father's a little guy in a crib.
Yeah.
And her son's a middle-aged guy. So it's just, I'm thinking, my goodness, how do they have children in these universes? They're born 6 feet tall. And I mean, does this operate by Benjamin Button rules or something? I mean, what this universe must be bizarre. Even Kirk said that we could go on forever discussing the differences.
Yeah. Remember the stars were all black and space was white.
Right. It was again kind of psychedelic. Yeah. But you get to, see Robert April, because he was a character that was only really in beta content, like comic books. There was a novel about him, but we established this character. And if I remember, wasn't that the name that Gene wanted to give the captain initially?
Yeah.
I believe it was that. Then they wanted to go to Winter. Then it became Pike.
Yeah.
Then Kirk. But so I guess Gene brought in his old Robert. That could have been Pike, though.
Yeah.
Oh, no, couldn't have been Pike. He was on Talos 4. So that would be April. But anyway, so yeah, that was a favorite of mine because, it was just interesting to see baby Eric sucking his thumb. Remember that? It's like it was kind of Kirk in a little baby in a corner. It was just interesting to see them all kind of just growing younger in the end, and it was just, again, there was another one in this one where they shrunk.
Yeah, that was funny too. Remember they had to throw ropes up on the transporter.
Right, they had like lassos and they had to pull down and stuff. So are we in kind of honorable mention territory now, like different moments we can talk about?
Yeah.
You want to go first or want me to go first?
Keep going. Yeah, keep going.
Okay. There was one very specifically one that I wanted to mention that I was watching a little bit earlier too, and it's the multi-sectioned alien. Remember Ali Bam Bam?
Oh, the one that would come apart and...
Yeah, he starts out as this extremely odd and very reckless alien who does everything in his power to get the Enterprise crew into trouble, not thinking about it, and refers to himself as in a very odd kind of way, and replaces their communicators in favor with fakes.
Yeah.
Because he thinks by being captured that he'll learn more about this species. And in the end, you see him come apart into 3 different parts.
Yeah.
And one of them is a little lake thing with little arms, like Kermit the Frog, that come out. So, I mean, this is an alien you could never do it on TOS.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's almost like a transformer in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like Voltron.
Oh, you think that like a Voltron alien? I mean, stack the pieces and, you know, form feet and legs, and I'll form my head. You know, that sort of thing. And my legs will come out and steal your communicators and replace them with fake ones. You know, that sort of thing. This is a very, very, again, almost psychedelic kind of plot line in a way. Another one that I was watching that I found very interesting it brought in the alien race, the Kzinti. And they're kind of like, I remember they seem to be kind of wolf-oriented, kind of dog-like.
Yeah.
Or like saber-toothed tigers. And it implied that there were 2 wars with the Kzinti. And when you time it out, one of them would have been just after Ephraim Cochrane. So I'm wondering, was the Kzinti like the second race Earth encountered?
I don't know. I mean, you'd have to. I mean, I don't know if they said anything specific about when they were actually encountered.
Well, they mentioned like 200 years. They had 2 wars in the last 200 years, and they lost both of them.
So put them all the way back to this century. So I don't know. I mean, that'd be like, yeah, probably right around where Ephraim Cochrane would have left, and
so I guess the Kzinti war would have happened between then.
Very early.
And the Kzinti are also like the Bajorans, at least with their rank system. You know, the name and the rank come out of order. So they have their commander is somebody named Chef Captain.
Yeah.
Rather than Captain Shaft.
Yeah.
And they're looking for something called the slaver weapon. And the slavers are a reptilian life form that billions of years ago enslaved all these races in the galaxy, but they were all, to destroy the slavers, all of them were destroyed and life had to evolve again. So again, the animated series keeps bringing in all these new evolutionary ideas we never heard before.
Yeah.
About life in the galaxy. And the slavers, if you remember, they're kind of like Cyclops lizards.
Yeah.
Because they have these boxes with these things in them, and one of them had a pitcher, one of them had a weapon the Kzinti didn't know how to use. And I just found it interesting bringing in the new alien and bringing in the slaver idea. You know, oh yes, and there's a couple of ones that I remember. They visited the Shoreleaf planet again.
Yep. Yep.
And what happened was the caretaker died, and the computer controlling it kind of started to go wonky and capture a horror because it wanted to, you know, kind of be free of what it was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it started making the characters attack everybody. It kind of weaponized them. But it was interesting to return to that planet again and see that.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Honorable mentions of mine. Oh, I guess we can discuss this too, you and I, because you probably the same thing. I suppose you have to talk about the time trap too. They go into this pocket universe where all these ships were lost, including the Bonnie Venture.
Yep.
Okay, and I know Stuart over on Trek Yards, hi Stuart and Samuel, have talked about this. The squinched up, bizarre, super Connie. It's the first ship equipped with warp drive, apparently.
Yeah.
That was a little odd. Maybe that's one of those places where canon kind of went a little loopy.
Yeah.
Because you can't tell me that was Ephraim Cochrane's first ship.
Yeah, come on. That looks, that's way too. I mean, even though it looked fat and stubby, it still was too advanced even for his time period. I mean, it was just.
I guess we can think that's the first Federation ship with warp drive, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe that's the Warp 7 ship post NXL1. He's built this weird compressed thing that. It kind of looks like a Daedalus class mixture with a Connie that's all squinched. I would love to see what the inside of that thing looked like.
Yeah, I mean, I know you sent me a picture of a CGI rendered.
Yeah, well, they've since remastered it to be more of an NXL1-y looking kind of ship or a flat ship. Because nobody liked that way the Bonnie Venture looked in.
That just was silly looking.
I mean, I know with animation they can go in there and do whatever they want now, but that was the only time where it was really... And that wasn't a bad episode either. It was kind of like that one on Voyager where they're in that void and all the aliens had to kind of come together.
Yeah, it was almost like that, yeah.
Yeah. Is it me or did Voyager take a lot from the animated series now that I think about it? They took the Lorelei signal, they used the time trap.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are my big things. What are your little little not episodes, but little interesting points in this.
Well, there was one called the Pirates of Orion, where
Yeah,
Spock
we saw the Orions for the first time.
yeah, and they had to get this drug to help them, and they got tangled with the Orions because they had it, and they came down to like a showdown between the Orions. They had to go to this asteroid, and the Orions had this backpack with dilithium in it. They were going to try to blow up the asteroid and everything, and so when the guy was getting ready to push the button, they beamed it out of his backpack and he didn't have it or something. I thought that was like, one of the first times you actually see a pinpoint accurate transport done with TOS era, because usually transport was never that accurate, but but with that, they was able to actually grab something out of somebody's backpack and beam it up, and you actually get to see an Orion.
Are they kind of orange in this?
It was sort of like a greenish blue, and they wore like this helmet and they had sort of like a jumpsuit, and they were kind of weird looking.
Now post Deep Space Nine and Enterprise, Orions are all green, but these Orions were a little different looking. But like I said, I don't know. I mean, every species has their different color variations, so I suppose there's different colored Orions. So
it could be.
The same with these might be different, So any more noticeable things in this? I mean, just little tidbits.
Well, it had some good Spock and McCoy kind of scenes in it, in that episode.
Well, there was one in the Infinite. I think it was not the Infinite Vulcan, but Yesteryear, where he made a joke that Bones didn't get about Andorians. Remember?
Yeah.
He said, "I have to recalibrate when I do a test on you," and he goes, "You don't know your good fortune. If times were different, you'd have to recalibrate for an Andorian."
Yeah.
Bones said, "That's supposed to be a joke. I should remind you, Vulcans don't tell jokes." And Spock said, "Times change."
Times change.
Because I mean, it's just interesting because they continue that. I don't even know how to do that kind of dry humor that Spock tried.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he was trying to joke or if that was just the way he was.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like a little bit of a joke, but told in a very serious manner.
Very dry way.
Yeah.
I think maybe Spock was trying to joke without being emotional.
Yeah.
Which ended up being more wit, I guess. So, they continued that humor. They kind of left that in there. One episode I did want to mention, just for the presence of it, was The Survivor, because we see a shapeshifter who is masquerading as a lost person.
Yeah.
And this particular shapeshifter is, again, it's an orange, it's called a Vendorian, and it's like an orange squid.
It kind of looked like an IG-88 or something. I don't know what the hell. I mean, it had this weird body. It was like it stood upright, had all these limbs on it, and
right. And it was from a quarantine planet that we're not supposed to see, and they basically live a life of deceit, apparently. And he was giving information to the Romulans.
Yeah.
Disguising himself as a philanthropist who had a fiance on the ship.
Yeah.
And and you could do more shapeshifter type of aliens on this one than you could on TOS.
Didn't they use the transporter effect when he would change shape? The sound effect.
Yeah, you kind of hear the transporter. Kind of like when you went to the old on a planet, you hear the little chimes and the transporter sound in the background. They used that transporter thing because basically it looked like he was kind of beaming up, sort of, when it happened.
Yeah.
Rather than Odo, where he just kind of morphed.
Yeah.
This guy kind of the idea is they can rearrange their atoms, so I guess they did kind of transport.
He kind of convert himself into energy, and then through energy he becomes something else in a different form.
Right. It's weird, Now I think about it, couldn't the transporter be theoretically used for the same reason?
Theoretically, yeah.
Which is probably programmed not to do that, but I imagine if you could make something into energy and back into matter,
you could alter its form.
I'm sure they programmed it not to do that, so people couldn't use it nefariously like that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, if something would survive being altered in different form, because human body's set up in a certain way, and if you try to change it around, it might kill a person.
Well, that's true, but I mean, it split Kirk apart, and he survived. The dog didn't, but
yeah, they split him apart in a weird way. I mean, it's like he wasn't like a half a person, and the other half, it's like it was
Kirk. One was evil, one wasn't.
It was like the transporter had this precise malfunction that was like not really a
For a copy.
malfunction. Yeah, I mean, to make a copy of somebody else and that copy living, and the other copy still living, that transporter had to make this more miraculous thing by an accident to happen. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I know that means the thing was damaged, but the implications and what it doing that, I mean, it's like,
Well,
what are the odds?
the transporter and that shuttlecraft turned the Enterprise Z crew into kids. So
Yeah.
the transporters can be problematic. We all know about that.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that maybe this guy has a mechanic where they have like this inner matter transporter in their biology, these Vendorians, where they can alter their shape, and that's. But again, it's just used for the transporter effect,
And then of course you had Tuvix, right? Remember they combined.
Right. Well, that was another malfunction, but it kind of merged two characters.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah. And we'll get to Tuvix another time, because that's an episode we're going to be dealing with on its own. So just letting you know. Because we've talked about that a lot. Any more moments you can think of? Because,
Not really. I just, overall, I mean, it was a pretty good cartoon.
Oh, there was one. I think it was in BEM 2, and I never realized this. This, I believe, was the first time the name James Tiberius Kirk was actually used.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Very distinctly used it in this one.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't on the James R. Kirk anymore. That was.
Yeah.
But I think they called him James T. Kirk in TOS after that, right?
Yeah.
I wonder why in the remaster, why they didn't just go in there and just Photoshop that R right out.
I don't know. I imagine some fans would have a problem with that if they went in.
No, it's not correct having James R. Kirk up there.
Yeah, I mean, come on. They did the remasters, right? And you still have the originals. So if you're going to do a remaster, then why couldn't they just go in there and
That would
change?
be so easy to just change that.
Yeah, it would have been easily done, and it wouldn't have.
See it. You could see the gravestone the way it was, but put the T on there.
It's not like they would do what George Lucas did by erasing all
They
the.
would slap all kinds of stuff in there or take things out.
Yeah.
It would just be correcting a minor little flaw.
Yeah, you can still keep the originals as they were and just have your other copies of the remasters, which it brings up another thing about the cartoon. Maybe one day they could go back and remaster the cartoon so that way it doesn't look so silly.
Yeah, I mean that filmation style of animation that can be a YouTube Flash animation very easily.
Yeah.
I mean, I could, if I had the software that wouldn't. I would probably do that on my computer today.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not hard animation to do by today's standards, where they got these flying 3D Dragon Ball Z Pokemon thingies.
Yeah.
I mean, there's shows like Adventure Time now where the characters are like stick figures.
Yeah.
I mean, so that would be easy to do. But it would be interesting to go in and just kind of make the Bond adventure look less stupid. and they wouldn't really, but most of the animated stuff really hold up pretty well. Except I noticed when you watch it on Netflix, unfortunately, you can sometimes kind of see where the cells move.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you can see the grain. Because they're using the Blu-ray edition on Netflix, right?
I think so, yeah.
And with the DVD, it's not as visible, but you can see the little grains moving. I'm like, oh, it's where it's
you
kind of
could see that in a lot of the cartoons at the time. I mean, they said it was almost impossible to keep those cells dust-free, but when they would put them on there, you could see the dust a little bit when they would do the shots on the camera.
Right, and because of the slight lower resolution and sometimes static nature of TV, that kind of disguise them.
Yeah.
When you have that crisp 1080 HD, all of a sudden they all show up, and I mean, people say when they watch The Next Generation, they can see pimples on Riker's face that were muted out before by the low resolution. But high res is good for some things, but for older shows, it can show pimples and scars and things that really shouldn't be seen.
Yeah.
High resolution for things that weren't meant to be high resolution can be problematic. But like I said, and again, I wanted to mention that they did reuse a lot of the scenes. Like, they have this mechanic. I don't know if I can do it on here, where they have Kirk running like that.
Yeah.
And they do that again and again and again, that same scene where Kirk would just run like that. It's very weird, awkward, where he's like thrust forward,
Yeah.
But they use that a lot. Oh, yes, and the Practical Joker, and this was actually on the cover of the VHS when I saw it. I don't know why Spock did it. They changed up this little blue thing with this periscope that made his eyes all messed up.
Yeah, he looked down in it and it had ink around it. So
Right,
it was,
and I don't know why he looked into that if he didn't know what it was.
yeah.
It seems so have no useful purpose. He looks into it, and I'm like, I wouldn't have looked into it. Wouldn't you have seen the ink right on it?
I don't think so. If the caps were black and the ink was black, I don't think he'd have seen it.
But I mean, if somebody replaces it with a weird thing, I wouldn't, Oh yes, and one of the episodes I can't remember did distinctly mention circuits.
Yeah.
But that's it goes with the TOS thing is everything's circuit based.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
We can use it there.
Right. I almost expected I'd hear somebody talk about the detector circuit, but that's we got the cannon thing and a detector circuit in this too. So we squeezed in a lot of our little
I
tropes.
noticed they had a new sound effect to the bridge that was really annoying. They had this that was constantly going on in the background. It was like some kind of a rapid sonar that was going on the bridge.
You mean that little click on the bridge you always heard?
No, it was like a chirp that would just it was on the view screen. Whenever they would just focus on the view screen, they had this really rapid sound that was going on that was never there before, and it would just play that.
Really like, yeah.
Yeah.
They also changed some of the red alert klaxons.
Yeah, they had like a double like it was like
right. They change it. No, it wasn't as bad as a motion picture. I mean, with all the noise.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine that kids watching this show and they're like seeing wah, wah, wah. The noise! I mean, that was kind of off-putting, but I know what you're talking about. The people make all that weird sound. Yeah. They make this weird, irritating, staticky, like chalk on a chalkboard almost.
Yeah.
They would go, yeah, I know what you're talking about now. Make that little. Yeah, I usually call it a little Yoko Ono noise.
Yeah.
Kind of like, you hear this weird little sound, and like, that was kind of, yeah.
Remember
I know what you're talking about now.
They showed the shuttle that can go underwater.
Oh, right, the shuttles. The shuttles in this are awesome. I love these shuttles. They have these nice shuttles with these like wing things on them. Tom Paris would have loved them.
Yeah.
And they had this nice big room. You could kind of stand up in them a little more. They were much more spacious. And they had the Aqua shuttle, and that was in the that was one about the Aquans. I was watching that earlier too.
Kirk and Spock were like they could only live in the water or something happened to them, and
the Ambergris element.
Yeah.
Right, and what happened with that was that they became water breathers, and they had little fins or something, kind of like the guys from Sequest.
Yeah.
Boy, we bought them, but anyway, the point is that, and they went down, and the shuttle would go under and over the water.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, did they have this stuff in TOS? Was that like part of an update they got or something?
Yeah.
So I wondered if it's on their 5-year mission. They have all that stuff in TOS. We just didn't see it.
Maybe. I mean, because we don't really know what kind of shuttles he did have. They couldn't have all looked the same. They must have had different shuttles for different tasks.
Right, because in Next Generation they had the original shuttles. They had the little boxy ones, and they had the little shuttle pods.
Yeah.
Voyager had a million of them.
Yeah.
They had those TNG ones with the little Voyager nacelles on them. Remember those?
Yeah.
And then they had those long ones that they used later, and then they built it out to fly out of stuff. And I think the Defiance one ever had one type of shuttle, but they all seem to have multiple shuttles.
Yeah.
I wonder what the Excelsior shuttle looked like.
I would think they'd probably be using the same one the Enterprise was using at the time.
I mean, the ones from 5?
Yeah.
You think they were using those same type of shuttles before in like 3 and stuff, or were they the motion?
Yeah, probably like the standard shuttle for most of the ships at that time period. And they probably had all different ones for different tasks. Like I said, they got some where they could probably go in the water or something like that. I mean, remember Tom Paris? He took the Delta Flyer in the water, and
yeah, I mean, those shuttles in TOS were the coolest things I've ever seen because they had all these new abilities and could do all this stuff.
Yep.
And they did a lot of episodes kind of centering on shuttles.
Yeah.
Just another honorable mention I saw, and because it introduced a race that I thought would be really interesting because they were in Yesteryear too, is Jihad. And basically what that's about is it's kind of about a holy war in space.
Yeah.
And one of them, it centers around a race called the Score. I mean, they're like bald eagles. But they're this warrior race that are really ancient, and they're trying to get this special crystal or something to declare some sort of galactic jihad. And, I just wondered, why haven't we seen more of the Score? I mean, we have the Andorians, so there are all these races we don't see, and they're avian.
Yeah.
When I looked at them, I said, "Are the score related to the Avian Zindi?"
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's just one of. I mean, I'm trying to think of when the Zindi were actually ever mentioned in any other series.
Well, they weren't. They were a creation of Enterprise.
So they were never. It was never a name that was brought up as like this.
Zindi were unique to Enterprise, but we assumed they were around during TOS.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't know. I keep getting the impression that the name kept getting floated around during like Deep Space Nine or
Nope, they were unique to Enterprise.
Yeah. So.
And I'm sure with whatever miscellaneous whatever Discovery is now, we might run into Zindi there. So whatever. But anyways, they're there. I mean, there's a lot of races. I'm sure the Betazoid are there. We just don't see them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of races I'm sure that they discovered during that time that we didn't see.
Yeah.
So I mean, how many Andorians do you see in TNG?
Yeah.
I believe just that holographic one within the Law one.
Yeah.
But I mean, you don't see a lot of Andorians. You don't see a lot of Tellarites.
Yeah.
I don't think we saw any. They always kind of had unique. We saw Klingons. We saw Romulans, but I mean, how often do we see TOSC aliens later or whatever? I mean, it's every time period seems to bring in a new species. But we know they're there.
Yeah.
They just wanted to kind of keep, I guess, Andorians and Tellarites in TOS. So anyway, I guess.
Did you ever find out? I mean, because I know season 2 of the animated show was kind of cut short.
Yeah, there's 6 episodes.
Yeah, so I was wondering if you ever figured out what happened, why they cut it like that, why they ended it so quickly. They just didn't do a full season.
Well, I don't know. I don't have a lot of information on why. I'm thinking maybe because, there might have been the idea that at that point, 74, Gene was more interested in pursuing what became phase 2 of the first movie, and he wanted to get the live action stuff back, and he figured, I don't want the animated movie to really go. There's not much information about why it ended. It was very successful. I don't know why they would have ended it.
Yeah, I mean, I tried searching on the internet for like reasons or something, and I really couldn't nail it down.
I always thought it would have been really cool if maybe after the motion picture they had an animated motion picture era series.
Yeah.
It's
not like they can't do it now. They still could do it. I mean, it's animation, right?
So Nickelodeon are doing one. So
yeah,
it's lower next thing, I guess.
There's a lot of gaps in the timeline they could fill in with little series like that. You
could do an Enterprise C one.
Yeah.
Enterprise B, Captain Sulu. You could do Captain Sulu one.
Sulu, yeah.
I mean, even though he's older now, you could do a Titan one with Riker.
Yeah, you could do the voice.
And Tim Russ. I mean, and the thing with the Titan is because a lot of the aliens are like Eric's and they're non-humanoid.
Yeah.
I guess Eric's was kind of humanoid, but I don't know. Eric seemed a little more reptilian. But I guess kind of humanoid reptilian. But yeah, the non-human type aliens, you could do those easier in animation.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to CGI at all.
Yeah.
So animated series would be a good thing for a series like Titan. Or Captain Sulu because they're older now.
Yeah.
And you could do, there's a lot more animation you can do today than even you could in the 70s.
Yeah.
So
it used to work well for Star Wars. I mean, the animation.
Yeah, the Clone Wars and the Rebel Alliance?
Yeah. Yeah, Star Wars Rebels.
So, yeah, Star Wars did a great thing with animation that have been very successful. So, and they're running back into that now.
Yeah.
Outside of CBS. So I mean, CBS. So. Star Trek, its future and present could survive better in animated form.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, there's still a debate going on that this show is even canon. I don't know why. To me, it just locks right into place for the most part.
There were too many elements of the animated show that were mentioned in other Star Trek spin-off shows, and to say that it's not canon at this point is really, you're just being obtuse. I mean, it's just. You had all the original actors practically on this. You had Roddenberry himself. You had all the writers from TOS. I mean, you can't get any more canon than that. I mean, regardless of how silly it looked at times on there, the stories is what's really what they're telling you. It's a story. I mean, how they present that story is, may come on a trash can lid at times, like you said, but it was still a story
Well,
that.
I mean, with a Bonnie Venture, but let's face it, they were able to do way more exotic things than TOS ever did.
Yeah.
Like I said, they could never have done an episode like the Magics and Magus 2 on TOS. I mean,
So,
you imagine them trying to stretch everybody out like that?
Yeah.
Live action?
I mean, like I mentioned before, I mean, they could go back and remaster some of that so that way it makes a little, looks more appealing, maybe a little less.
Yeah, kind of like they did with the TNG where they kind of just, or TOS where they kind of made subtle changes.
Yeah, replace certain things with something a little less silly looking, or who knows? I mean, like you said, that kind of artwork back then was at the time was really high tech, but today that's nothing. I mean, they could do that at home. They can just easily
tie that Bonaventure out and just squeeze in a better looking ship.
Yeah, just put something else in there.
But like I said, for the most part, it was very interesting, and we added all these new alien species like the Thelosians, the Score, Spock 2.
Spock 2.
I know. We always talk about that. Just the way that was presented. like, 'cause I remember it was before a commercial, wasn't it? Like,
yeah.
The music would always get loud. Oh, it's Spock 2. like representing some kind of superhero character,
Yeah.
Spock. I found that cute. So, is there anything we wanted to add about this series?
No, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Well. And like I said, if you're a Star Trek fan and you have not seen this, I can't imagine why you hadn't, or you think, it's not canon, I shouldn't bother. It is totally worth seeing, and you'll feel like you watched the cartoon season 4 of TOS, basically.
Yeah.
Only a lot cooler in some ways, because it's not just planets with chimes and transporter effects and people wearing makeup. They actually have really interesting aliens, and sometimes the plot lines actually are able to go a little further than TOS. They're swimming underwater in these cities and stuff like that. Because, it's a cartoon, and it's like Marvel. You can do a lot more with it. So, Anyway, next week, we've got, I'm not going to tell you what it is. We've got a somewhat more ambitious idea coming up next week for Jeff's idea. But we had a little homework on our hands for that one. But until then, if you haven't seen the animated series, whenever you're watching this, just, if you have Netflix or you have it on DVD, go put it down and go watch it. It's cool. So anyway, and you'll probably have your favorites. So until then, this is Trek Prime. Live long and prosper till next week.